Welcome back to the channel. The gun rattles, spitting fire and brass casings onto the dry earth. The target isn't an enemy soldier. It isn't a tank or a fortification. It's a bird. A 6-foot-tall, flightless bird running at 30 miles per hour, seemingly oblivious to the bullets whipping past it. This wasn't a lone hunter having a bad day. This was an official military operation. This was war. A war between the Commonwealth of Australia and 20,000 emus. And the emus were winning. To understand how this absurd conflict began, we have to go back to Western Australia, 1932. The world was in the grip of the Great Depression, and nowhere was it felt more keenly than in the remote wheat belt. Here, thousands of World War I veterans had been settled onto marginal land, promised a new life as farmers. They had faced German machine guns in the trenches of Europe, only to now face economic ruin and environmental disaster at home. As if a global depression wasn't enough, they were about to be invaded. Every year, after their breeding season, huge flocks of emus would migrate from the interior towards the coast. But this year, their path led them straight into a paradise, the newly cultivated farmlands of the ex-soldiers. An estimated 20,000 emus descended on the district of Campion. To them, the wheat crops were an all-you-can-eat buffet, and the fences the farmers had built were little more than minor inconveniences. They trampled crops, broke down fences, and devoured everything in their path. The farmers were desperate. They had fought for their country, and now they were losing their livelihoods to what one newspaper called an army of feathered tanks. A delegation of these soldier settlers traveled to Perth to plead for help. Their request was unusual. They didn't just want assistance. They knew the emus were tough. They asked for machine guns. And incredibly, the Minister for Defense, Sir George Pearce, agreed. Pearce saw a win-win. It would be excellent target practice for his men, and a fantastic piece of public relations. The government would be seen helping the heroic veterans. So he dispatched a small force under the command of Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery. Their arsenal: 2 state-of-the-art Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The media eagerly followed. A Fox movie-tone newsreel cameraman was even sent to capture the glorious victory of modern military might over a bunch of birds. The first engagement was planned for November 2nd. The soldiers had located a flock of about 50 emus near the town of Campion. The plan was simple. Local settlers would herd the birds into a perfect ambush, right into the line of fire of the machine guns. But the emus refused to follow the script. Instead of clustering together into a convenient mass, they split into small groups and scattered. The gunners opened fire, but the birds were too far away and moving too erratically. The first barrage was a complete failure. A few days later, they tried again. This time, they spotted a much larger flock of over 1,000 emus near a local dam. The gunners carefully positioned themselves for a perfect kill zone. This was it. The moment of truth. The lead gunner waited until the birds were at point-blank range before opening fire. The gun roared to life, and then jammed after firing just 12 rounds. Before they could clear the stoppage, the entire flock had vanished, leaving just a handful of their dead behind. Major Meredith was stunned. He reported back, with a clear note of respect, that the emus were not an easy target. If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, he noted, it would face any army in the world. He observed that the emus seemed to have a leader. Each mob has its leader, he wrote, a big black-plumed bird, which stands fully 6 feet high and keeps watch while his mates carry out their work of destruction. The emus, it seemed, were organized. Humiliated, but not defeated, Meredith devised a new tactic. They would take the fight to the enemy. One of the Lewis guns was mounted onto the back of a truck. The plan was to chase the emus down and fire on the move. This resulted in what can only be described as a comedy of errors. The truck was too slow to catch the sprinting birds. The ride was so bumpy that the gunner couldn't aim. He allegedly didn't fire a single shot. The chase ended when the truck, swerving to avoid an emu, crashed through a farmer's fence. By now, the press had turned on the operation. What began as a patriotic story was now a national embarrassment. One politician in Australia's parliament sarcastically asked if a medal was to be awarded to the gunners. An ornithologist, D.L. Cervanty, publicly called it an attempt at the mass destruction of the birds. After nearly a week in the field, the results were abysmal. The Army had used 2,500 rounds of ammunition. The official number of kills was just 50 emus. That's 50 bullets for every dead bird. The cost of the operation was far exceeding the damage the emus were causing. On November 8th, facing ridicule in Parliament and the press, the Minister for Defense ordered a full withdrawal. The first Great Emu War was over, and the emus, without losing a single battle, had won. But the story wasn't quite over. The farmers, now facing the victorious emu army alone, once again begged for support. The emus were more destructive than ever. Reluctantly, just days later, Pierce sent Major Meredith and his men back into the field. This second campaign was slightly more successful. The soldiers had learned from their mistakes. They were more patient, used better ambush tactics, and managed to kill more birds. From mid-November to mid-December, they reported killing 986 emus, but it came at a staggering cost. The final report stated they had used 9,160 rounds of ammunition. That's a ratio of exactly 10 bullets for every confirmed kill. And even with nearly 1,000 dead, thousands more remained untouched. By the end of 1932, the military officially gave up for good. The war was over. The government realized that a military solution was not the answer. Instead, they placed a bounty on emus, encouraging the farmers to hunt the birds themselves. This new strategy proved far more effective. In just 6 months of 1934, over 57,000 bounties were claimed. The problem was eventually managed not by machine guns and soldiers, but by the farmers themselves. The Great Emu War became a bizarre footnote in Australian history, a national punchline about government folly and military overreach. It's a humbling story about humanity's often misguided attempts to command the natural world. That image of a soldier, armed with one of the deadliest weapons of his time, firing helplessly at a flock of giant sprinting birds, isn't just a strange anecdote. It's a perfect symbol of a battle that was lost before it even began. The Army had faced an enemy that simply refused to play by the rules of conventional warfare, proving that sometimes even a machine gun is no match for nature's sheer, stubborn will to survive. For more stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications.